Welcome to Off the Deep End. This podcast endeavors to bring you compelling, inspiring content to encourage you to pursue your dreams, reach for your potential, and stay aligned with your purpose and vision. I'm Rachel Tamilio, and I'm here to remind you that you have more power, promise, and potential than you probably realize. Sometimes you have no idea what life has in store. You learn, you do your best, you apply your skills and knowledge, but maybe it isn't clear exactly what your mosaic of life experiences will lend themselves to do for you or others. That's a lot like my next guest. It wasn't until after service to our country that he realized his true mission in life. I hope you enjoy the conversation you're about to hear.
My name's Nick or Nicholas Tucker, and I grew up in Colorado for the most part, bounced around. My father was a union iron worker, and my mom was a geological technician for oil and gas. And oftentimes we would move for career purposes for my mom and dad, and that kept us in Colorado for the most part, but we did live in Dallas-Fort Worth there in Texas for quite some time growing up. So, I grew up in northern Colorado. I call northern Colorado home for the most part, a town called Greeley. It's fairly large now, but it's kind of an idealistic town to grow up in, especially as a young boy, young man growing up, because we really had access to it all. Hunting, fishing, camping, anything outdoors. Colorado, the secret's out. We do have really, really good weather most of the year. Even if it's middle of January, you can usually find a few days to sneak out and go explore, recreate. So, fantastic place to grow up. I wasn't raised well-to-do. We were very middle class, blue collar family, whatever you want to call it. But we always had plenty, and my parents made sure we always had everything we wanted, especially as it related to athletic pursuits, creative pursuits. I was pretty involved with music early on. Marching band and all that stuff, right? And they would bend over backwards to make sure. So I had a very, very enriched childhood, I would say, is the best childhood they could give me. They did so. And I think that put me at a huge advantage, especially as I look back, or focus on things that are happening today. And growing up well-rounded and growing up just with a variety of experiences has lended me very well. And I would say some of the folks that I align with today, even some of my really, really good friends, they're friends that I established back when I was, 8, 9 years old. And I'm still really good friends with those folks today. I think that says a lot as well. If we weren't, I'm glad that the TV did not raise us, or social media didn't raise us. And everybody, much as they don't want to talk about it, we can see the big difference today. I'm very fortunate to have had, I don't know if you don't want to call it ideal. I had a very good child set me up for missions later on in life.
You know a lot about hard work and doing what needs to be done. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about your time in the military and how you think that is lending itself to helping you move this mission forward.
So I joined the Marine Corps in 2002, right out of high school. It wasn't I joined because of 9/11 or anything like that. My father was a Marine. He was a Vietnam Marine. He never promoted the military. He thought I should avoid it altogether. Still, I joined to provide a service, and to protect and defend the Constitution. It's important we identify which Constitution, right? But
I do that in a whole other show.
Totally. But I swore that oath to defend the Constitution, and that's a perpetual thing. And that's just not me saying that. A lot of the patriotic folks that I served with, they feel the same way. And anyways, I great military career too. It was unfortunately my 2002 is when I entered service. 2003 my father passed away, so I was right in the middle of my training and getting ready to go to the fleet. All that. But Yeah, so I spent most of my enlistment in Southern California. I was with 3rd Amphibious Assault Battalion, Echo Company, which was Marine Expeditionary Unit, Marine Expeditionary Unit platoon or company. And all that means is we were shipbound for the most part, and we would deploy on ship for 6 months at a time. And the only benefit to that really is you did get to see some really cool places. And, outside of just going to Iraq or Afghanistan, we got attached and involved with the humanitarian efforts from the Indonesian tsunami in 2004. That was, it was an experience altogether, but that felt really good to be able to help provide fresh water, fresh food for an area that was just completely devastated by that tsunami. And I'm just making there's some connections that I have from my time in service that I still have today, and I'll get into that why that's important. But I think my time in service, I had a pretty straightforward enlistment. Deployed to Iraq once. Yeah, there were bad days, but the good days always outweighed the bad. And then towards the very end of my enlistment, I didn't have quite enough time to deploy once again. So I actually got attached out, and they made me the company barracks manager, which is the hospitality BEQ residence. So where the enlisted Marines would stay, I was essentially in charge of the facility, and that included everything from maintenance and all of that. But the reason I mentioned that is because I was able to uncover several $1 million of fraud going through maintenance records and applying them to contractors' records, that they were billing the government for at times. And I was only there for 3 or 4 months, but this goes back into me being just potentially wired this way. But I would look at this spreadsheet. It wasn't fun data to look at, but I'd look at this spreadsheet that these contractors had made up for the government so that they could bill them. And I would verify what they said they had worked on. I would physically go to each room or each repair and make sure it was done. And when you start finding out 50% of them really weren't done, and they were just, writing it down. But that was in the last 6 months really of my enlistment. And I worked with, there was a major at the time, and I was an E5. I was a sergeant. So this major was infatuated. He was completely blown away at this work I had uncovered to uncover all this fraud. And we would go to these board meetings with a bunch of other officers, and Sergeant Tucker, present your findings. So presenting evidence, has been a strong suit. It's not something I asked for, but seems like everywhere I look, I find myself in a scenario to potentially solve a problem. And it's never typically been a problem aligned to just specifically me, but I've never shied away from offering or lending a hand, especially if I knew what I was doing could help somebody else, So yeah, no, if anything, the service to country, made me more patriotic than ever. And then understanding that corruption wasn't just confined to the private sector. I deployed with a group of guys that were in training cycles for 2 years, and we were really tight. We like a giant football team, I would, call us. I'd been together all 4 years of college, but, and I got out, and yeah, I had to get a job quickly to stay in California. Was still on terminal leave, which means it's your saved vacation from the military. And yeah, it was the first interview I ever had, and it was with a recruiting company that what they did was they would recruit skilled trades for a lot of the general contract in Southern California. So I really had no downtime shifting gears from military to civilian. It was just kind of right into a recruiting shop, which is very sales driven. It's very, you eat what you kill, so to speak, so you always had the ability to make as much as you wanted, or, you know what I mean? You would fall on your own sword. So From a, I guess, working standpoint, I've always relied on myself to provide, and nobody else.
What are some of the missions that you're on right now, and how did you come about getting involved with those missions?
There's one main mission of mine, and of course, it's got a lot of feeder purposes and things of that nature, but we're really trying to roll back time as it relates to our agricultural process, cultivation process, and putting the focus back on high quality foods, creating self-sustainable communities, whether they're agriculture communities, residential, you name it. I think you'd have a hard time finding anyone that disagree that our food supply chain needs an overhaul. And beyond that, it was really identifying the same companies that are involved with not only producing the chemicals that go on them. Those two things go hand in hand. And when you start to, it's one thing to be passionate about something, a pursuit, and the other thing is you've got to do your homework, and in doing so, you start to find out exactly who you're up against. You're up against corporations and lobbyists, and it's always been that way. But we're at a point in this country where if I would have gone down this pursuit probably 10 years ago, it'd have been really tough. And the only reason it's really picking up steam now is that cultivators specifically and consumers have hit a point where we've got to change. We've got to change quickly. And that's only been here, I would say, in the last 3 to 4 years. And that is because folks have started to identify the root cause to a lot of not only America's health, but world health. And it all boils down to our diet. So that's my main focus right now. I've had a lot of other side missions, and again, life experience has provided an opportunity to see through the lens. I've been spreading information about pharmaceuticals in the cancer industry for over 15 years. I lost my father in 2003 to cancer. It was his third battle with cancer. He's battled several different types of cancers, and so that, I would say, really motivated me to start looking at what's with these cancer rates, what's causing it. Again, reducing everything down to a root cause, which a lot of and a lot of your viewers know, our industry likes to paint illusions around the root cause, because if they uproot the root cause, that's when real change can happen. And where we're at is we're stopping a massive conglomerate. It's made up of corporations, industries, academia, every is not everything, but there is a large piece of our economy that is unfortunately tied to sick people. And those that have benefited from that don't want to give up the reins all at once and quickly. But we are winning. More and more people are taking their freedom back from these industries. And so that's been my biggest focus here recently. And it's, of course, draws in a lot of different industries and a lot of different ways to combat it. But overall, food health, which once you have an individual understanding the relationship between performance and what you put in your body, whether it be physically, mentally, or spiritually, that is a direct correlation to the output and illness. So once you do have someone that understands that, they're motivated to not only correct, but start to peel back the layers and peel back the control that we've given as consumers to these industries that they have completely taken our empathy and used it to their advantage. And watching the trust and the folks starting to trust themselves again, that's been really big. And I will say there's a lot of good industries. The entire industry hasn't been out against humanity by any means, but the industry finally has an open mind, and they're letting professionals speak about whether they're doctors or organizations talking about naturopathic treatments, older than dirt, old stuff. And what I always remind folks is we're so fixated on the last 100 years because that's the timeline they want us to stay focused on. But if you peel back, go past industrialization, you will see the same conglomerates I'm talking about. They were in prohibition activities 100 years ago for anything naturopathic. As petroleum-based allopathic came up, naturopathic was squashed. There were big organizations that were all about naturopathic and herbal remedies, natural remedies, whatever you want to call them. And the same time, allopathic, petroleum-based medicines were rising. The propaganda against your naturopathic treatments was at a whole all-time high, and that's never stopped.
Right.
But yeah, no, we're seeing a turn there. How we're applying that, because it's about re-educating, re-inspiring communities, one community at a time, and that's through your cultivators, things of
So
that nature.
if we can just bookmark that for a
Yeah.
second and rewind just a little bit, can you
Mhm.
tell my audience, but what would you say you credit your ability to be critically thinking and open-minded enough that you would choose to look deeper into an issue rather than just accept the reasons for it at face value?
Good question. This is, I think, another deep seed that was planted in my youth, that as it relates to authoritative, authority, and you would assume doctors and things like that are authority. It was always a trust but verify. And even at an early age, I started to learn pretty quickly that verifying it did take some extra time, and it wasn't the most fun thing to do. But when you would verify, you'd always find something off. And it's like, ooh, that's another coincidence. And I've always been a humanitarian, do no harm, but certainly take no shit kind of mentality. And that was a lot. That was a lot from my dad. And part of the things he went through growing up too, he just had a very, very gentle way of planting those seeds, and they've grown in me. Maybe it's the way I'm wired, and that got into my recruiting career, which is a lot of analytical work. But I always wanted to understand how things work. It didn't matter if it was the way the sun rises, or the way a 5-speed transmission works with an overdrive. I had to know how, seeing it on the shelf or seeing it encased and just trusting that it's going to work. That never quite did it for me. And I've always been a humanitarian.
There's a place for healthy skepticism, you would say.
Always, yeah, absolutely, always.
And what
I
about
think,
your career? Like what
yeah,
in your career prepared you for this mission that you're on right now?
yeah. My career over the last 17 years as a civilian has been in a recruiting function, recruiting high level, typically executive level positions, and not just one industry, but any thriving industry we've had in the last 10 years. I've been a part of. And um, I had a pretty decent, well, in an internal way, I was able to detach a little bit and watch how all these industries would work together from 100,000-foot view. And early on, I would find industries that I really had a liking for, like early on in my career, alternative industry, before I really started digging into solar panels and wind power and things like that. We're finding out they might be more harmful than good in some cases. But those types of industries, anything emerging, I would really spend a lot of my time on. And I think that was from seeing that our large industries as a whole, I mean, it's one machine that feeds itself.
Right.
And got to a point where I started to try to find these independent, smaller companies to cater my time to, and to service. And they were fewer and far between. The more popular they'd get, the more times they'd be purchased. And then before you know it, a $50 million independently owned company was now a $250 million company that kind of lose I don't know, the individuality, the independence of a sovereign entity, because it got folded into a large system of entities. So seeing these transactions, and I would work positions in engineering operations, even accounting and finance sometimes, CEO searches, things like that. So we would have to get intimately involved in the details. And over time, over the years, and the reason I left was me not wanting to, or me not leaving things alone, needing to understand how things would work. I would find out that almost every one of my clients was doing something that wasn't, above board, or they were just putting a Band-Aid on something that needed a full repair, and just throwing money at problems. And um, I think we're all seeing this. The throwing money at problems is just a cycle, and it's that cycle doesn't belong to us. And um, I think my career lent me, it was a very advantageous position to be in, and especially now because I understand, I have a thorough understanding of how all these industries work together. And when you tie that into agriculture, pharmaceuticals, and food and beverage in our country, um, I mentioned it a little bit earlier. How we feed ourselves mentally, physically is pretty big business around here, and our adversaries know that. And when you come to find out that most of your food industry is designed to produce the results that we see today, um, those are gut check moments. And for me, yeah, 2.5, 3+ years ago, I had to leave industry altogether. I left a sound career, very comfortable financially, and I'd do it again. I'd do it 10 times. Because now what I'm able to do is really focus not only on myself, but focus time and energy on the other people just like me that are trying to make an impact. And it's hard work because we don't have a cheering section quite yet, or traditional the traditional resources, funding, things of that nature to really bring everybody together. But what we have been able to do from a grassroots perspective is pretty amazing. And I don't expect to have the news on it, or especially mainstream sources talking about this, because it's bad for business. But yeah, the connections being made at water board meetings, ditch board meetings, small municipal town meetings. This is where the rubber meets the road right now, because we're finding individuals that not only walk the walk, but talk the talk too. I think a lot of us, especially in the last couple of years, I've lost a lot of friends, especially from the business standpoint, because you can see they've made a decision to, ethics are on this side, but we're going to go after the money. The money's been safe, secure. And I think if you're paying attention right now, you've seen that, the way our politicians have acted, the way our large corporations have acted. It's all been decisions made with humanity's best interest to the side. They're not working for a brighter future for humanity. And when you identify those folks that are willing to do, and of course everyone has to make a living by any means, but when humanity is the main driver for somebody's service, organization, product, whatever, that's powerful, because they have a level of passion. They have a level of intention too, positive intentions for what they're doing to be impactful. And everything else to me is just a lot of noise and money right now. And that has a lot of folks, in a chokehold right now. But the more we can get our message out, the more people are interacting with each other, just as we're doing here. More people that are going to find a way out of this vicious cycle.
How can people empower themselves right now to do some of the things that you're talking about with cultivation and things like that, just from an ordinary person point of view? How can I start reclaiming some of my power, my authority, my sovereignty over this part of my life? What is the, first most basic thing I can do in my community?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. How would I go about that? What is available for funding, for resources? You and I talked about that one-on-one before. But if you could share some of those interesting facts with my audience, that would be great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Pretty easy. I know folks don't typically like to get involved, but if you live in a residential community, start going to your HOA meetings, start going to your community meetings. So good chances, if you don't have the real estate or you don't have the infrastructure to support a garden, a vegetable garden of any kind, your neighborhood might have green belts available. and I say green belts, open spaces, and they're typically irrigated with sprinkler systems and all that. That's actually how I was able to get my HOA where I used to live several years ago. I got them involved because I was able to share how much money they were spending on watering grass when they could be spending money watering fruits and vegetables for their community, which that turned into, having a community gardening schedule where folks with odd addresses would come and, do work and help out on this day. And anyways, long story short, was establishing interest, first of all. And once you've established interest, that's when you can go start applying pressure to whoever is kind of, directing traffic, whether that's your HOA or what have you. But even your HOA, if you do your homework and you look into some, especially the Farm Bill, the 2018 Farm Bill is loaded with alternative agriculture programs. And I bet there's one for HOAs specifically. A lot of HOAs have access to these green belts, irrigated green belts. Soil conservation is big. There's lots of soil conservation, water conservation. And it's just about shifting focus and you got to make a case. You got to get the genuine interest, but it's holding people to account to do this. Change is hard for everybody, especially if you're an entity that just collects checks potentially, or whatever. But what I'm trying to say is you've got to get your homework done. You got to get organized, whether it's your family, your neighbors. You do have to have other people involved, and you got to start applying pressure. I won't get into the full constitutional authority now, but if you don't understand the Constitution and how that applies to these endeavors, that might be a good place to start. Understanding not only your authority as it relates to dealing with government entities and other entities. But I think it provides a pretty solid foundation and might even be reinvigorated for some when they grasp this information that, the Constitution was founded by we the people to, again, it's to limit government. It's to shape government in support of the people. And we have that all backwards now, where we get a bill from the HOA, we get a bill from your township or municipality and say, oh my God, the government's out there. They're always right. I should just send them more money. No, next time you open your water bill or your HOA bill, start having these conversations. Find somebody on the HOA board that will speak with you and have sound ideas. It doesn't need to be perfect, right? But clearly state your intentions. Hey, I'd like to transform some of these green belts that we just water for grass. Can we turn them into a vegetable garden of some sort that incorporates participation from the neighborhoods or the neighborhood? Growing upscale from that, the cultivators too, it's just about getting this information in their hands and breaking these cycles. And I would say in my area, we're dominated by GMO corn and feedlots, and those two go hand in hand. They're owned by the same people. It's the agrichem industry. Swift, Tyson, I think there's two others, but there's really 4 large beef producers or livestock producers that aren't independent anymore, but they have a big say of what gets planted agriculturally. And we're having more and more farmers step out to get out of that cycle, but a lot of times they don't know where to begin. And this is because even the folks at your local Farm Bureau office or USDA, there's a lot of corruption involved at those places. And the 2018 Farm Bill, not much time was spent on it when it was being passed, and there's a reason for it. Anybody that's interested in backyard garden to somebody looking to convert acreage into one of these sustainable programs, there's something for everybody typically in the 2018 Farm Bill. So much so that the USDA and some of these offices around these GMO corn areas of operation, they deny it even half. So when I see that kind of behavior, it was just more for me to dig in on and to why. There's some programs out here that absolutely put sovereign authority and puts more tools in the cultivator's belt than ever before. And that's important as they transition off of the system. Most cultivators and farmers today are absolutely handcuffed by government subsidy check. And yeah, it's not going to be easy, but some of these programs are absolutely ways out. These are grant programs. They're not loans. They don't need to be paid back. And I won't get into all of them here, but anybody that's trying to find an alternative way to make a living in agriculture, there's a program for you out there. And there, I think it's just digging into your own, talking with others who have gone through the process or similar process. And this is even when you get numbers, this is why numbers is important. Say 3 or 4 of you all get together, take it to your town board meeting. The towns, they're usually very good at writing grants. They usually have a grant writer on staff, so they know the process. It's just about shifting focus. It's about reprioritizing. And I can sit here and say it's just shifting focus. That's the hardest part, is getting people to shift.
Yeah. Mindset is important. You just understanding, like you said, who actually created government. Mm-hmm. We did. We the people did. And to take that sovereignty, to stand in that power, is what we really need to do. And that all starts with understanding the order of things. God, us, government, not God, government, us. I'm wondering, Nick, if you have any sort of plan like written out already that you could potentially give someone who's interested in bringing all of this information to people in their community, to start a grassroots effort in their community. Do you have something already made up to disseminate that would help them?
I do, and I'd love to share it because it's a double-edged sword. It's when you're feeling out, I call it feeling out, you're testing the waters, right? But email is it's a necessary evil today for a number of reasons. But to generate interest, to generate genuine interest from people, you do have to. They don't oftentimes want to hear you. Send it to me. Send me some information so I can see it. But anyways, I built some really good email decks over the last couple of years that I share with both cultivators and municipalities. Even emails that I've used to kind of open doors at the USDA, to where some of their employees are like, "Oh, that was on our website." Yeah, it was. But yeah, I would love to share that with anybody because these emails, they do take a lot of time to put together, but they're almost templates now, to where I have a quick conversation with somebody, whether they be a government official or a cultivator or your next door neighbor. You just hit send and say, "Hey, this is what I've been up to, and this is why." There's these. And the most amazing thing is, you think, well, you're talking about a 2018 Farm Bill. Well, look at these programs. They're funded out to 2024 and 2025. What's that tell you? It has really nothing to do with this administration. And a lot of people are still, I'm not going to get into that, but a lot of people are still, oh, Biden's in office, we can't get anything done. And that's our enemies, humanity's enemies, want us focused on all this stuff that bogs us down. So invest the time. As counter to the narrative that you're on as it may be, you got to invest the time to understand that there is an alternative way. Somebody has been putting these programs together to help cultivators. I mean, big time. And the reason these were put together is because they know how handcuffed a lot of the cultivators are by industry in large. But yeah, long story short, I have a lot of resources that I can share. And oftentimes in sharing those resources with other people, you'll start to get information back from others and say, "Oh, here's what we're doing. We're a greenhouse company. We're getting grants the same way." It's about expanding our resources the smart way.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'd love to share those links. I'll put them in the description of the recording.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So what would you say to someone, and I unfortunately hear this a lot from people, is just like, like, what difference does it make? Like, I'm just one person. What's that going to do? What would you say to someone that's maybe stuck in that kind of a mindset?
Well, first of all, it's just me, or I'm one person. That's the largest psyop ever. And that's to keep you, the individual, thinking that it's impossible to do that on your own. But that's completely counter to the truth. And every fire gets started with a spark, and we're all potentially those sparks. And the good thing about right now, when people say, "Oh, it's just me, I can't do that," is due to our surroundings and conditioning, good, bad, or indifferent over the last several years, we're all soaked in gasoline right now too. So someone's going to start our fire, right? And it's going to go. So it is we the people. This country was founded by we the people. We the people are going to take this country back. So each and every person is super important. No matter if you're sending a couple emails out a week, with these grant opportunities, and I mean that's helping. That's getting information out. Or no matter what you're doing, if you're doing something to create change, you are setting off a chain of events, whether you know it or not, in this dimension and beyond. So individual action is absolutely necessary, and it's absolutely vital for any of this to work, whether it's agriculture related, pharmaceutical related, children's education related. It is all being changed by individuals, right? And then individuals who set themselves on fire are then able to find the others that are already on fire and say, oh, wow, let's combine our forces. So no, that is a psyop to keep you down, to keep you sitting down, that, oh, you're just one person. You can't change the world. That's completely false. You look back at our history, even just 200-300 years, some of the most significant changes come from individual catalysts. And each of us have not only the honor, but times like now, we have the responsibility, to do something. And you don't have to be drastic. Small actions go a long way. But also, when you start acting out individually and standing in your sovereignty, that sends a message to humanity's enemies as well. That, okay, humanity's all done. They're done with their quiet form of slavery that they've been under. So yeah, it's more important than we can even fathom right now, individual effort.
Perfect. I don't want to keep you too much longer here.
No, you're good.
What other kinds of messages do you think my audience would benefit from in terms of moving forward to empower themselves with more knowledge so that they can take more action in their life individually and also in their community?
Yeah. Research is key. Doing your own research, trusting yourself again. It's folks, sometimes they want to confuse what's happening right now with, these conspiracy theorists are just bringing stuff out of thin air. And no, we're refocusing on the fact that human sovereignty has been hijacked, over several hundred years on quiet forms, but they've kept us comfortable about it up until now. But understand why they did that. I think every American needs to understand why they try to take or hide your sovereignty. They're scared of you at the end of the day. Somebody standing in their full sovereignty with autonomous thought that is led by something higher, a larger mission, something other than themselves. That is bad for business as usual. And the more you understand why they tried to hide this and take it away, the more you're going to want to stand in that sovereignty once again. And even looking back, knowing our real history, I think, is important. And this might be a little far-fetched, or this might be out there a little ways, but I think one of the greatest lies they've ever put on humanity in the last several hundred years is that today we are more technologically advanced than we were back then. And it's just not the case. And you start looking into, wow, why are they hiding this technology? Or why are they hiding that technology? What's with all these scarcity illusions, right? Scarcity of water, food, clear air, it's all related. And it might sound like a broken record, but it all is mind control against the individual to keep that person in a state of fear. And once those shackles are off, they'll never go back on. And you'll continue to grow as an individual. And then from there, oftentimes you can initiate change by telling somebody, but it's more important to show them. And you do that by these small acts, or, they don't have to be hugely significant to get started. One thing at a time, but by acting, you're showing others, and you're giving quiet permission almost that sometimes we as humans, we need to see, right? Oh, if they're, and it's follow the leader kind of thing. But this is a movement that is happening now, and they want you to feel like you're alone. But the truth is, there are millions of people that woke up this morning with a different viewpoint of life that have reprioritized things. And it all starts, and it all goes back to embracing the individual human sovereignty of each of us and working together, again, eliminating corruption. And that's, if I could tell you my mission in just one line, it's eliminating all these their cycles, their profit cycles and their roadblock. It's eliminating that to unchain humanity, unleash it.
I love
We
it.
have evidence. We have
Yeah.
evidence, that we were way out ahead of these things, several hundred years ago. But yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, I love it. I found it funny a couple minutes ago when you said this might be out there. Remember, the name of this is Off the Deep End. So that's very fitting. And there's so much that we can glean from you, Nick. I really appreciate you sharing what you have with us.
They've done a really good job at putting society in these, if you can imagine society, and building these silos around us. So we think naturally nothing's really connected, or I'm just going to stay in my lane. And the truth is everything's connected. And once these illusory structures come down, walls of compartmentalization come down, it's like a aha moment. And people's train of thought transforms completely when that happens.
So given that you said, the first place to start is with doing your own research.
Mm-hmm.
I think to the average person right now, doing your own research means going on Google and doing a search.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you recommend? Where would they look for the information that you're just barely scratching the surface about right now?
Yeah, Google, I haven't used a search platform in a long time, but some of your other search platforms, and the data it's bringing up is pretty insane. And I'm comparing that to a couple years ago. So these search results that you will get from, try different browsers. Brave's a good way, but if you're using a browser that's not Google, you're going to get a different set of results anyways. And even if you are using Google, I'm starting to see results that populate that you wouldn't have seen, a year ago at all. And that's reassuring because the free flow of information is there and it's getting passed around. Yeah. So where to start? I mean, the Constitution is super, super important. I think you need to understand why the country is in the place it is right now. Why things are the way they are. I think we've got some manipulation, good and bad, of the public perception right now, but there's incredible change going on. I think you'd have to be completely checked out not to see that. But I think it's the understanding of why things are changing, and then from there, I mean, it's focus on the individual needs to focus on something that, and likely they're going to have an issue that they're dealing with now that's relative to this, that relates, and that's the best case scenario. But yeah, I mean, there's no perfect place to start. It's just starting.
Start with
It
an
really
open
is
mind, right?
100% an
You need
open
that
mind.
first.
There's lists of books that I can recommend, and I'll send you a lot of the stuff too. But embracing some of these ideas, right, and embracing new things, that's important. But I think people are motivated, and when they find out that, why are they poisoning food and why are they doing all this, it's to keep, you the individual in these chains. And when you're able to stop the flow of their influence one sector at a time, you change. You change mentally, you change physically, you change spiritually. So there's not a perfect way to start. Start somewhere. I think we all have areas we can start, but start somewhere and share your success with somebody.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. This has been so much fun. Any final thoughts before we close out?
I mean, I'm just going to reiterate that it's we the people. you are who you were waiting on. You are your savior. And there's more and more people out here every day that would love to embrace you, would love to have your help, your support, whatever it is. Go out and find them. They're out there looking for you now.
Thank you so much, Nick.
You bet. You have a good one.
Yeah, you too.
All right, bye-bye.